This episode is sponsored by Maison Arts.
Hello, and welcome to 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. I'm your host, Rachel Vogel, and joining me tonight is Livia Piomelli, Head of A&R at Maison Arts, a boutique music publishing company based in Los Angeles. Livia works day-to-day with the company's songwriters, producers, and artists, creating collaborative opportunities, signing new talent, overseeing operations, and reviewing and critiquing their new works. Previous to working at Maison, she was the director of A&R at Big Noise Music Group, where she worked alongside and signed several artists like Fridayy, Stolar, John Feldmann, Theory, and PJ Bianco. And prior to that, she was the A&R Manager at Arthouse Entertainment, involved in all facets of the company's operations, including A&R, marketing, management, and business affairs. And last but certainly not least, she's the co-founder of Motion Creative, a nonprofit with a mission to support programming that encourages community building and educational opportunities between creatives and the entertainment industry with a focus on underserved communities. She organizes a variety of programming such as panels, mentorship, writing camps, and networking events, and several of those events have been featured on Billboard and Hits Double Daily. So with that said, Livia, it's great to have you join 3Q. How's it going?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
So excited to have you on. So with that, are you ready to dive into the first question?
Let's do it.
Imagine for a second you're sitting down with your 25-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give her on a personal note, and what one piece of advice would you give her from a business perspective?
I love this question. I think I'm gonna just shift the question a little bit though to my 20-year-old self. It's a little bit further away. And I think for the personal advice that I would have really loved to receive in my early 20s is take care of your finances and try to learn how to take care of your finances, because that's truly just like the foundation of setting yourself up for success in the future. I made around $20,000 a year in my first music industry job, and ultimately had to get a part-time job to afford to work at that company. And I think I didn't know that wasn't normal. I didn't know the intricacies of how jobs work and are you supposed to have benefits and whatnot. I was just happy to be here. I was just happy to be in music. And I think if I had a little bit more knowledge and tried to have more knowledge around that I would have been able to advocate for myself a little bit better. And instead of, trying to shift the world around me and, getting a part-time job on weekends at Costco and dipping into my savings of like all of the money that I had made in college and trying to support myself outside of my job, I should have just gone to my job and said, hey, like, how do I afford to work for you? How do I, this is how much I'm making. This is how much my rent is. This is how much my expenses are. How do I do this? Because I want to work with you, but I just don't know. I don't know how. I think if I had done that, they would have been open to finding a solution with me. But because I didn't have that knowledge, I was allowing that situation to happen because I was finding other jobs elsewhere. So that's definitely advice I could have gotten. And I did get some really great advice too. At the end of college, my mom gave me an incredible book called Women in Money by Suze Orman. And that was such an eye-opening experience because that was the first time I ever really learned about savings accounts and checking accounts and what is a credit card and what is interest on a credit card and what are all those little nuances and how to use the system to your benefit. But I got that book, but I wasn't making enough money to really understand like what was happening, right? And so I think as I progressed and started making more money in music, I then had something to work with. And ultimately, it was really when I started listening to this podcast called The Financial Feminist by Tori Dunlap. She's a financial educator. She's super cool. And she has this episode, this like New Year's like goal setting episode where she's like, all right, you're sitting down and you're going to take a notebook and you're going to start writing with me. So get ready. And I went through the whole thing and I was like, oh, wow, like I'm motivated, I'm hungry, like I want to take control of my finances, it's like, I wish I had that in my early 20s to have built what I've built for myself now. And like, I'm so grateful that I had these tools in my mid to late 20s. But if it was in my early 20s, my lifestyle would be even better. So from a business standpoint, I think the biggest, and it's easy for me to say it now because I can look at my history and say this with confidence now, but just to trust your gut and trust your body and what your body is telling you, and like your mind and your body work obviously together. And it's so important to trust your gut, because if you don't trust yourself, then you're at the mercy of trusting what other people like think you're capable of. And that is the worst position to be in. And there's so many examples in my career where that happens, where, I mean, one huge example is I found this songwriter who was 16 at this writing retreat, and heard her demos. She was amazing. I just knew I wanted to work with her. And so I started managing her. And she was in a situation where she needed to find money to move to California. She was from out of state. And the publishing deal is what would have gotten her and her whole family to move and be able to afford a couple years of living in LA while they figured out what they were going to do. And I was talking to a friend who was in my close circle at that time, and he was super excited about her too and wanted to sign her. And we were having a conversation, and he was like, I just really don't think you're going to get more than $50,000 for this deal. She's a young talent and she has no cuts to her name. She's not generating any money right now. Like, that's kind of like what I feel like is a good deal for her. And my body was just giving me so many signals of like, it wasn't like an anger. It was more of like a defiance of like, you're telling me what my limit is. Oh, that really, listening to that feeling, I was like, okay, like, let's prove him wrong. And so I started, doing the hustle and connecting her to more publishers. And I was a publisher at that time as well. So I knew everyone that I needed to connect to, and, reached out to a bunch of different people who, ultimately were like, she's incredible. And I was putting her in with amazing songwriters and getting out these incredible demos. And I eventually ended up signing her for 6 figures, and she was able to move her whole family to LA, and they were able to live in LA for several years, which led her to getting more cuts and generating more money, which, is allowing her to be in LA now. And I feel like I'm so glad that I did not trust my friend, who, by the way, he was a trusted friend, and like, he didn't have any malintent. Like, this was his opinion, like, and he wasn't necessarily wrong. Like, it's not normal to sign someone who doesn't have generating cuts for 6 figures without, some sort of reasoning behind it, right? Like, he was giving me his honest opinion, but ultimately, like, he's not in charge of me or my life, like I am. And you have to trust that feeling. So I think it's really trusting your body and your intuition. And like, all of my career successes, every single one has been trusting my gut. So that would be my business advice, is to just really trust your gut.
Yeah, I think you bring up such a good point, especially about like trusting your intuition in a job. And like you said, if you get a text from someone and you feel like you're going to throw up, maybe, not the best job for you.
Right.
All right. Moving along to the second question. Every industry has its dirty little secrets, and you and I both know that it's no different in the music industry. And sometimes people think that's a bad thing, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they can be quite good. What's one secret you would like to share with our listeners about the industry?
This is a really fun question. And I really do love how you, include both the good and the bad, because there are truly great secrets and also some really bad ones. I think for me, I guess it's being less of a secret now, but I think it's still probably to the general public still a little bit, of a secret, is salary and royalty transparency. I think that is a huge confusing kind of world that a lot of people have trouble navigating. And I think that confusion ultimately causes for people to not understand their worth. And that causes for a really unbalanced economy in our industry. I mean, we can start off with like creatives, right? You know, you get so many different streams of income. You get streaming, you have sync, you have performance royalties, digital performance royalties, mechanical, like you can get SAG-AFTRA if you're a performer. Like there's just so many different streams of income that you can get. And then you're getting it on a quarterly basis. You're not even getting it every 2 weeks. And on top of that, when you do receive your money, you're receiving money that you had earned 9 months to a year prior. So you as a creative are in sessions every single day, working, making music, things are coming out. And then you have to remember what you did 9 months ago, a year ago, to be like, okay, well, this song, I remember a year ago was on this and that. And like, you have no reference point to look at and be like, how come I'm not making X amount of dollars? Or like, should I be making more or should I be making less? You have literally zero reference. And then you're kind of at the mercy of like all these different companies that are, you know, collecting these royalties on your behalf. And, you know, sometimes it's easy to be in touch with them and sometimes it's not. It is really such a confusing place. And it's really unfortunate because, you know, when you get presented a deal, if you don't know how much you're worth, it's so easy for you to be taken advantage of. And at the end of the day, it's really like, it's your fault. Like, there's no one auditing you or the deals that are happening. You don't have any like insurance or protection of the ability to be like, wait, I just signed this deal, but like, wait, my worth is so much more. I had no idea because my money was being held up in this black hole with like some, you know, company and I didn't know. It's like, I feel like that's a big secret. And the same goes for salaries. I mean, talking about our salaries in music is such a hush hush topic, which I love to talk about. I love asking people how much they're making. I love knowing about what their benefits are. I think that is such an important thing to talk about. And the more I started talking about it, the more I realized how underpaid everyone around me was and how little benefits people were getting, or if they were getting benefits, how little they were getting paid salary wise. I mean, I had a friend tell me who was working at a major music corporation who you can see their financial statements. It's public. Like they share how much revenue they're making a year. Like was making 35 grand a year living in Los Angeles. It's wild. She didn't know. And she just, like me at the beginning, was like, let me just get my foot in the door. No one teaches you like, hey, maybe you should negotiate your first contract. And like, it's okay to negotiate your first contract. Or like, hey, maybe before you say yes to anything, like call a couple of your friends who are in the same position as you and see how much they're making. And like, maybe like go on, you know, Indeed.com or whatever it is, or LinkedIn or wherever to like compare other jobs. And I mean, a while ago, it wasn't as easy to see the numbers, but now there's a law that's passed where companies are forced to do that, which I think is like a great step forward, right? Because you're able to then really have like a baseline of like, okay, well, that person in that position is making this much money, and that's like their baseline that's public knowledge. So you have some sort of room there and transparency there. People get so just like fearful of it, you know, and it's like, who cares? It's just money. Like it's just paper. And if you're making a little bit more than me, I'll get that money in a bonus. I can figure out how to, like, it's not like you against me here. It's like, it's all of us together trying to figure out how we can sustain what we're doing in this industry together and keep doing it, because like, this is the best industry to be in. Like, I genuinely can't imagine having another job. Like, I literally work with songwriters and producers for a living.
Can't get much better than that.
It doesn't get better than that, to be honest.
Final question. Throughout your career, I can only imagine that you've been asked plenty of questions, whether it was for an industry conference, the media, or even a promotion. But throughout all of those interviews and all of those questions, there has to be one that you've never been asked but would have liked to. So what is that question and what would be your answer?
Rachel, this question is so hard.
I get that all the time.
This question is so difficult. But I think for me, and again, if we're talking about like a question that I would like to be asked maybe like a little bit earlier on and not necessarily right now, for me it would probably be, are you living a life of passion and purpose? Is what you're doing meaningful? Do you feel like your life is meaningful at this point? And I think if someone had asked me that question, like even 5 years ago, I feel like it would have planted such an amazing seed of, okay, well, yeah, what I'm doing is really cool. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, everything I do in music is so fun. It's glamorous. It's cool. You go to parties, you meet really cool, interesting people. You work on music that like you listen to growing up. Like, you listen to music that your family is proud of. You listen to music that goes on the radio, and you work on music that's on radio and on film and TV. And it's such a cool, exciting opportunity to be in it. But I think I didn't realize until I started motion creative that none of that really like fulfills me and brings meaning to me. I think what brings me the most meaning in those situations is signing and developing talent early on and being able to give them opportunities they would never have otherwise. But outside of that, like really starting motion creative with my co-founder Jess Furman showed me what it means to have like a true purpose in what we do. And Motion is a nonprofit 501c3 that is very niche and particular in what we do, and we focus on providing educational opportunities for creatives in marginalized communities within the entertainment industry. So, we do panels, we do writing camps, we do the networking events, and the whole point of it is to create a space for people that don't get a space otherwise. And so we do Level Up every year during the Grammys, and that's for women in music, and the whole goal there is for higher level execs to meet younger execs that we vet as rising stars, in the hopes that there's mentorship opportunities or work opportunities. And then the writing camps that we do is similar. We did one called Out Sessions for LGBTQ plus talent, making sure that there's always an A-list talent in the room with a rising star to see what would happen after the camp, years after the camp, and seeing how the younger stars grow, and how the higher level talent becomes part of their close circle. That is just so rewarding and meaningful, and it's just, you're giving, you're not always taking. And I think in our industry, we're always trying to take stuff for our clients. We're always clawing for whatever opportunity we can get them, and competing with the best of the best at all times. I wish I had gotten that question asked early on, so I could have really dove into like the advocacy side of things and learn more about songwriter rights and producer rights, and have such like a deep understanding of that then, because I'm really starting to do that now. And it's such a joy to like learn. It's also sad to see that there's so many fights still to be had, right? But at least I'm doing something about it, and it drives me. It gives me passion and motivation, and it makes me want to like live a life that I know has a positive impact in just the way that I know that I can, right? Like, it's with my network and with my strengths and what I know that I have the power to do. Like, I know I'm not going to solve climate change. Like, I'll recycle, but I'm not an expert. Like, I am an expert in publishing. I'm an expert in songs. And how can I make my own difference with that knowledge and with that experience? So yeah, that would be the question I wish I got asked, for sure.
Well, Livia, thank you again for joining me. And to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Stay tuned for next week of 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions.
And before we close out this episode, one last reminder. This episode is sponsored by Maison Arts.
See you next time.